a few weeks ago, a fellow Australian YouTuber, Boydie, ran a charity stream raising some money for Operation Supply Drop. Hicks, the lead producer of DayZ, was gracious enough to show up and do an interview for us, and I was mostly asking the questions. So the situation is that Hicks is watching the stream, I'm asking questions, Boydie's playing, a couple of other people jump in from time to time. It's not really organised at all, it was all off the cuff, and it was mostly questions that I was interested in personally. The footage you'll see in the background is not from the stream, it's just nothing footage that I recorded to give you something to stare at while you listen to the interview. So you can think of this more as a audio interview or more of a podcast or something like that rather than a video. The first question I asked was regarding the console version, what kind of priority it has compared to the PC version of the game, whether that might slow down development and so on. We'll just pick this up from where he started to respond.
The console version is second, very clearly second to the PC version. It can't exist without a completed PC version.
Yep. And some people are concerned about it taking away development time for the PC version.
I think I remember Brian saying something about it's a completely separate team, isn't it?
It's not a separate team, so to speak. There is no team working on the console version. The only thing that's really getting actively worked on is just as we move towards the new rendering module, obviously you have to make sure that it's compatible with rendering on the proper hardware. So that's about it. As we move forward, we make sure each pass, is this working to at least render basically on the console, so that when we start working on the console version, we're not fucked.
Yeah.
That's it. I think it's like one guy out of 80 people. So, no.
There you go.
There's nothing being taken away from the console.
I'm honestly looking forward to it on console as well, because it's a completely different experience. PC's a bit more in your face, full on, but on console it can be just a lot simpler, a lot easier.
Yeah, filthy casuals on the consoles.
I think
so.
This is just me kind of thinking hypotheticals, considering we really haven't gone down this road too much yet. But I think the biggest difference is, I would assume, my personal opinion would be just in how a lot of the controls and screens are presented. Honestly, I mean, it's DayZ, right? So it's not like there's a lot that they can take away from the game. I think it's all about just making it accessible to the control scheme of a console. That's just my opinion, though, because again, I'm just what's the term I'm looking for? Forgive me, I just woke up. The term I'm looking for is, I'm thinking out loud, because there's no physical product for me to speak of with experience.
Yep.
Maybe I think people are just worried that it's going to be like some of the other titles where PC's an afterthought, and they're just worried that it might go that way.
That's like, well, that's just ridiculous. This is a historically PC only company where its flagship is, and as far as I know, has no plans of ever coming to consoles, the Arma series, and a company that relies almost exclusively on modding for the Tales and community on their titles. You couldn't think of a company that would be less inclined to do that. That would be like saying that you were concerned that the next Mario game is going to be too complex because there'll also be a version running in Windows or something. Like, no, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's harder to think of a company which goes after a more niche and hardcore audience for the PC.
Yeah, it's just one of those truisms. It's like you never have to worry about one of the flagship titles from Bohemia being too simple or dumbed down if it happens to end up on consoles. In the same way that you don't have to worry about like a Crusader Kings title ever being too easy to understand.
Yeah. So, would you a really rough guess? Would you say maybe a year after the full release for the PC, we might see a console version?
As much as I love you guys, I'm not gonna talk.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you into trouble.
Well, it's just we don't even know ourselves. I'm sure the company has goals and they're excited to move on to the console, and I know Microsoft is excited for us to come to the game preview program. But right now, and again, my focus obviously is DayZ itself. Um, Again, we have to get DayZ on Steam to a feature complete state at the very earliest before any genuine resources can be dedicated to a console version.
Yep. All right, that went on a little longer than I expected. The answer to that one, just the
Sorry,
discussion.
I talk a lot. You know I
No,
talk a lot.
no, it's great. It's great. So animals and hunting. How much deeper do you think that part of the game will get?
I think that entirely depends upon optimization and bug fixing in the way of server performance. But that said, unfortunately, I can't talk too much about this because we have a really sweet teaser video coming out very soon that
I
is
look
on
forward
this
to it.
exact subject. I don't want to
Wow.
ruin it too much.
All right. I'll just say, just from my perspective, I would love for the animals to become pretty difficult to hunt and to sort of smell and see you from a distance and run away quickly. I'd like that to be a pretty challenging part of the game. Um, anyway, I guess we can leave that there.
Horses.
The farming stuff. Um, any Can you tell us anything about how that might change?
Well, at the top of my head, aside from changes that are coming on the action system, which I've talked a lot about on the new player controller and animation system, aside from how that might impact the existing design of farming and horticulture and all that stuff, I think the base experience is there. You know, you're going to dig up a plot, you're going to plant seeds. You can put fertilizer if you want to accelerate it. You're going to water it, so on and so forth. Said plot itself is persistent. We're going to want the contents to be persistent, obviously, so that if you plant something 10 minutes before a server restarts, it'll be there when it comes back. But past that basic experience loop, what we're looking for is what you do with what you grow, expanding. So sure, you're going to see a couple new crops come in and such, but the focus is not as much on, say, the mini game experience of planting and harvesting as much as it is what you can do with the results of that, what
Right.
those offer. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you can pretty much open up a restaurant, be a bit of a chef.
Well, that was definitely something that Peter, my lead designer, is fairly adamant on is expanding what can be done via cooking and boiling and that kind of stuff. The whole state changes when something's in a fire, in a pot, and so on and so forth. That's very important, and that's actually why, despite the jokes I might crack about kiwis and bananas, that's actually why they're not. They're being phased out because they don't make sense in the region, and B, they're not part of the move forward when it comes to cooking.
Right. Makes
Oh
more
my
sense.
God, that was brutal. Sorry, I'm watching Boydie stream as well. He just totally murdered that guy.
Oh, that's why I was so silent. I had a feeling there'd be someone down here.
It's go
You
time, eh?
better bandage, man. You better bandage. Anyways, continue, Vidge.
All right. Now the first person thing. You've toyed with the idea of making the official servers first person only. Have you thought any further about that? How close are we to this?
Well, it can't be done until the server browser UI is rolled out on the new UI system. If we're gonna do that, it needs to be in a situation in which navigating servers and understanding what you're doing is very, very simple.
Right.
And the existing stuff, it's a big mess. Like it's probably one of the few things I'm genuinely embarrassed about is how difficult it is for people to just install the game, go over to the server browser, and understand what they're looking at.
Yeah. So it is going to happen, is what you're saying.
I I'm gonna try it. Yes.
You're going to try. Okay. You're going to try to make it happen.
I mean, again,
Right.
they're our servers, so to speak. So, and we're in development. Now is the time to try this kind of stuff. So it's definitely going to be experimented with.
Right. So if you find that pretty much no one's playing on those servers, there's not really much point.
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, let's be realistic here. If we make the switch and the new server browser UI is out there, we've ensured that the first experience people get when they install the game is a first person one, and we find that it's still with. I mean, almost as much weight as we can put in behind first person
Yeah.
without removing it. If it's still in a situation where nobody's touching it, then we'll have to.
There's
At
nothing you
that
can
point,
do.
then we exactly. However, there's of course the idea of the hardcore servers that I talked about. Oh, geez, about a year ago. Obviously, the server rule set is not like super important right now to development, but it would be definitely something that we could try at least rolling out uh, on a third of the official servers, assuming that the experiment of them all being first person didn't work. The whole idea of a hardcore mode where there's no server enforced, no GUI, none of the stuff that's on the bottom right hand of your screen and so on and so forth. Server enforced first person only, and something else I thought would be really cool to throw in this mix was if you die, you can't create a new character on that server for, I don't know, 24, 48 hours, maybe a week. Something where you're really locked into that whole no UI element, first person only, and your death really matters. That would be a really cool thing we could try as well.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I've heard you mention that before as well, and that's the other thing that I found really exciting. That idea of not spawning back, because it's sort of the issue on the coast in Electro and Cherno and stuff when you kill someone and then they respawn and run back and stab you on the back 5 minutes later because they know exactly where you're sitting. Whereas if you have a battle in the north, in the far north somewhere, you've got enough time to look at the body and escape or whatever before they can get to you. You've got at least like 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And first person and that respawn timer would, I think, be the main elements that would change things a lot.
Entirely agreed. I think it would be crazy.
Yeah, it'd be beautiful. Uh, so, all right. And also had another comment from someone just wanting to send some love your way. They appreciate what you do. They understand how hard the job is, how much pressure you're under, and just wanted to say, yeah, thanks for everything.
I didn't think you were going to read my comment.
Oh, well, thanks for playing and putting up with all the problems that comes with video game development. That's appreciated.
Yeah. Now, something from me. I just wanted to discuss quickly the whole early access thing. So in the past, you developers would work on a game, and you do the normal testing process. You know what to expect. There are going to be bugs whenever you make changes or add something. You knock down one bug and two more appear. And then from the public point of view, oh dear. And then from the public's perspective, MechWarrior 2 just materializes on the shelves, and they can go in and buy it and play it, and it works. And that's what everyone has been expecting now for decades of game design and development. Now we're doing this thing which is hasn't really happened before, early access, where developers have certain expectations, the public has a completely different expectation, and it didn't really overlap, and it clashed a lot. And especially you guys at Bohemia are kind of writing the rules as you go along. And it seems like you're now reaching a point where before you put a version of the game on stable, it pretty much has to be in a way like a complete game in terms of being playable and not crashing and being fun. And it's like every time you release a version on stable, it's a full game now. Like that's almost the attitude that you're taking towards it.
Well, I mean, that's
Sort
true
of.
to a certain degree.
Yeah,
At this
I'm
point,
exaggerating.
Obviously there's a desire to make the experience as stable as possible, which, depending on the task or the major focus of a build can be either fairly easy or incredibly complex, and especially when you get towards kind of the tail of the overall development of larger new features, like when you're working on your engine and creating massive new areas of the game, and switching over from legacy systems. It could cause a lot of trouble. Like you genuinely cannot be. Someone said to me the other day, it's like just fix the bugs and don't make new ones. And the whole idea, it's not how software development works. You genuinely, especially with a video game, which deals so heavily in random user input, which user input will go so far off the design that you whiteboarded and you sketched out. Yeah, especially for us, like again, we're dealing with the new physics system and moving to the new animation system, the new player controller, rewriting all the player actions in the new script. These are massive changes that can and will break a lot of shit. And we can't predict everything, right? We fix one thing or change one thing, and it can affect something 10 systems away. And normally, within the reasonable amount of time for title development, be it anywhere from 2.5 to 5 years, you have plenty of time to analyze the issue, to triage, to go over tests, and so on and so forth. And you have a much more reasonable bug bar when you're not trying to keep for lack of a better term, when you're not trying to keep a car on the road while doing a full strip and restore for everything from Bondo on the frame up to reboring the engine. And unfortunately, that's what we have to do with early access. Now, we specifically have to deal with that. A lot of titles that use early access, not all of them, but a lot of titles that use early access have come with an established engine and have a more friendly design and scope towards early access. Like they know that, well, A, B, and C, these are established. We're not making any tech changes in these areas. We're not doing any rewrites of the base engine on this level. What we're doing is we're going to take this tool set and we're going to create a game around it. That's a much more low risk scenario, right? Especially when paired with early access. If you know you've got a formula that works and you've got a tool set that's established and exists, you got industry professionals that in the tens of thousands that know this tool set, it's a fairly safe bet that you'll at least recoup your costs and the title will get out on a reasonable time scale with rapid updates. But for us, and again, I wasn't the one that made this decision. I just the one that had to live with it. For us, going in and saying, all right, we're gonna go into early access. We're gonna do it fairly early in the actual project development, 3 months for us, and then within the first month or two, when we realized that this really works, I believe it was Dean. He made the decision that we've got an opportunity here to be the title in Bohemia that fixes all the fucking problems that he hated being a modder of Arma. For what we were doing with DayZ, we said we can do this. Actually, we have the revenue stream coming in. Enough people support the product, and it's early on enough. If we need to make this decision now, because we can't make it later on down the road. You can't 2 years in decide I really hate my rendering module. We're gonna rewrite it from scratch.
Sorry, I have to interrupt. Charlie's just come into the chat and said he was the one who killed me.
Oh, Charlie! It's always Charlie. Like I was saying, it's very frustrating for consumers, and it's very taxing for the developers. In a normal environment, the bug bar, the bug. Let me find bug bar. A bug bar is effectively where the line sits between this has to be fixed now, or this can be pushed for a certain date, and we can work on the feature work. And internally, a lot of times, as long as a new feature or function is propped up, it does operate. It might have bugs, but you can go through the base loop on a system. Let's say, I don't know, what would be a good example for us. The the chambering system that's being worked on, or vehicles. Vehicles would be even better. The vehicle can be created, the parts can be put onto the vehicle starts, you can drive it, damage the parts, and traction is calculated, be it buggy as hell, but it's calculated. That,
I didn't know that.
yeah, I mean, as long as it A, B, and C works, that system exists. It doesn't matter how many annoying, glitchy, and gameplay breaking bugs. As long as that system is functional, as long as that is there, you can move on to the next system and flag those bugs for the milestone that they're appropriate at. Let's say you break game development into a couple milestones. It would be first playable, or a concept. That's a draft you put into your publisher or the company decide to make the game. And your next milestone, your alpha milestone, traditional development, is that the title starts up and you can get in game. That's literally the base definition. I can start the title, there's a main menu, I can press a button and get in game and move around the world. That is an alpha milestone. And then you get your code complete, which comes much later, which is the base functionality for the engine is there. All the A, B, and C tools that the rest of the game are going to need have been created. And you get your content complete. And that's where anything plugging into that, the systems that plug into that tech, have been created. Now, when I say, and it's important to pay attention to that, created and function at a base level, not fully functional, not bug-free, not even playable to a certain degree. It just, as long as you know that the base skeleton is there, you can go A, B, and C and get to the end result, albeit buggy as hell. As long as it's there, move on to the next. That is traditional game development. As long as it's there, move on to the next. That is behind closed doors. As long as the testers can get in and verify that system at least functions and it hasn't screwed up any other system, move on to the next. Then you get past content complete. You get towards like your RC and your ZBR stuff, your zero bug ratio. That's when things start getting polished. When you're trying to hit that milestone, that's when you squash those bugs and make sure everything is at a gameplay level enjoyable. And it tends to be one of the longer milestones, obviously, because you're constantly taking that title and those systems and putting them up against a bank of tests that are designed to effectively simulate what a consumer is going to do to the title versus the intended design of the game.
Yeah.
And the consumers, at the earliest, usually will not come in until, at the very earliest, a release candidate build, and that's like user research labs and such, and certification testing and so on and so forth. In fact, traditional QA doesn't even get attached to a project until you've got all of those base functionality for the engine completed. There are unit tests and stuff that the programmers do before that, but traditional manned QA, which is what a lot of the games industry uses, it's far more difficult to automate software testing with video games than it is with like an operating system. So for us, we brought the people in years before they normally would, and said, not only we brought these people in, but we have to commit to doing our best to prop everything up so it's actually playable. Which is incredibly difficult when you consider that there's a lot of stuff. Oh my God, the ships are really poorly placed on this build.
Oh crap!
Incredibly, what was I saying? It's incredibly difficult when you consider that the game designers not only have to work on creating the new systems and prototyping and design doc and going through all the related tasks, whether it be scripting and dealing with the programmers, identifying the function how they want. And going over blockers, but they also have to dedicate to make sure to keep up all the prototype stuff that was put in early on to make sure that this design works and the players will play with it and the systems work. They have to prop all that shit up at the same time and make sure that people can continue playing it, despite the fact that stuff that they have to fix will more than likely not be in the end product because it has to be rewritten and stripped and added to the new system. The designers have to double up their work almost, and still stick to a reasonable time frame. Which is why we had a company kind of retreat, I guess, towards what was it, right before E3, I think. Call it team building. The company does it once a year. The whole company goes, and I was asked to speak about DayZ. They had the leads from the other projects, and that's why the cornerstone of that talk was just me kind of rambling on about how great I thought my team was because they've been able to, as incredibly stressful and difficult as it is, they've been able to keep relatively close to the original guideline of 2.5 to 3 years without too much push on features and keep the base game at least playable for thousands and thousands of people. Frustratingly playable at times with the bugs and such, but fucking playable. Like you can install the game and have an experience, and people have gone in thousands and thousands of hours with something that they normally shouldn't. It shouldn't be in the hands of consumers.
No,
It's not easy.
people don't even really understand what the roadmap is for, or they seem to think like it's you've written it in stone, and if you don't do these things at these times, achieve these exact things, then you fucked up, and you're ruining it.
Yeah. I mean, it's much easier to stick to that roadmap. The more risk you remove from a title, the safer the title is. But that said, I'm not even dealt with mobile games that have the level of lockdown that some people might think a roadmap is for. The roadmap, think of it like a road trip when you sit down with your friends and you say, we want to see A, B, and C. Oh, putting a barrel at the top of the stairs is genius. We want to see
it is, isn't it?
It is. We want to see A, B, and C within our road trip. We're not saying, oh yeah, well, we're going to be, June 27th we're going to be in this city, and June 29th we're going to be in this city. Like, no, you don't know what'll happen when you go on this road trip.
Yeah.
You know that you want to be in all these spots. So you lay out the road map, like we're going this route. This is our route from West Coast to East Coast. You're not saying we're going to be in all. We have a hard schedule for all these things. We want to be, in this city sometime in this week, in this city and sometime in this week, and that's why we do the quarter review kind of discussions at panels that usually at trade shows that end up somewhere near. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I'm watching the stream. That's brilliant. They put individual little stacks of ammo in every square, so he can't just pick the barrel up. Yeah, that's why we do those little like we did at PAX Australia, where I went over recapped quarter 1, quarter 2, and then talked about quarter 3, and then prior to that we at RTX we did the same thing. Went over quarter 1 and quarter 2 and talked about our goals, explained what was done and what wasn't and why, and yeah, I mean that's well, in my opinion that's what we should do. And we keep people informed as to what's going on feature wise. If something was pushed, we let them know why it was pushed. But I think the biggest thing is just kind of bridging the distance there and explaining to people that just because it says, I don't know, aerial vehicles, for example, aerial transport, just because it says aerial transport on the roadmap for this quarter does not mean all our aerial transport is going to be in and fully functional. It means we're going to have an aerial vehicle in and operating, flying through the skies, ideally some base parts in. That is the implementation of the feature, not the finishing of the feature, the implementation of it.
You might even decide that something is a bad idea or a lower priority.
Exactly. I mean, game development is relatively fluid, especially when you're dealing with a complex multiplayer setup. You need to be able to make a decision in the fly and change things based upon what you see in testing and feedback. You need to be able to do that, and that's one of the reasons I believe that early access exists. It's to allow developers to do that and allow the consumers to be a participant in that decision.
Yeah. So you're not only dealing with early access, which was a very new thing when DayZ was being developed, like the standalone, but also a game which really doesn't have any precedent, really. So
I think the closest thing that I'm aware of as far as is scope and tech changes is Rust, and even they sat through. Geez, I think Gary and his team sat through like a year of the game kind of just, at least on the Steam side, being idle in the waters while they worked on massive changes on their end, and the game's so much better for it. And I'm pretty sure they're still in early access as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, as far as I'm not aware of anybody that wanted to kind of do what we were doing, like a full-on engine development alongside the project. No, that's definitely uncharted territory.
Yeah, and just even basic game design, the core ideas of the game is you do have to kind of make it up as you go along in a way. and decide what things to focus on.
Definitely. There's there's constantly that battle internally between making it too complex or making it too simple, like trying to find the balance of fun, so to speak.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, the balance of fun is defined differently for nearly every person out of that 3.5 million that picked up the copy.
yeah. If you
So
made
it's
the game, if you made the game the way I wanted it to be made, you'd have about 50 players.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd say the same thing for how I want to play it, but
Yeah,
um, it's kind of a dark art of trying to find the balance between the two. Because I have no desire to see, personally, I want to make this clear, it's personal. I have no desire to see DayZ, the base product, be anything like some of the end of life DayZ mods. You know, the ones where you
yeah.
just hop in and there's 500 vehicles and you can get an M4 in Electro kind of thing. It's ridiculous. Um, well, for me, it's ridiculous.
It's the furthest
I
thing from what it's supposed to be.
Yes. That said, uh, I think we've taken some of the difficulty at times on builds a little too far to see how people would do it. It's some of the things that keep me up at night. Is the balance between non-perishable food being either too easy to find or too hard to find.
See, but I love
Be-
0.55, Brian. I imagine that's probably one that you were referring to, but I loved it. I thought that was one of the best patches because everyone was saying there was nothing there, but you got off the coast and it was there.
to a
I
certain
used
degree, to a certain degree, not all servers operated that way. 0.55 for a server that worked on it properly was great. For a server that had problems with it, it was not, and it got right down to the cleanup of items not functioning properly. So some servers could legitimately get to a situation where there wasn't anything. Like we're talking over almost 3 million points, potential item spawn points across Trinaris, right? And there were some servers that would end up with like only 7,000 items spread across those 3 million. It's just not sustainable. 30,000 spread across 3 million points. And that leaves you in a situation where even then it is still difficult to find things because it's spread. The world is huge, right? And it has to be evenly spread out. And that's why we continue to iterate upon the central economy and what we can do with it. The last status report talked about the region control tool, which will allow us to drop down another level of granularity and have more finer control over what spawns and where it spawns and so on and so forth. Like I think I talked about this at the presentation in Melbourne. If I wanted to say, all right, well, beans, let's say the beans and Makarovs, the classic DayZ coast warfare kind of stuff. I can make it so that the numerical value that is assigned to the whole map, I think beans are like 200 cans of these items, only spawn along the coast. I can ensure that those are not wasted in a tiny village up in the middle of nowhere. Because ideally, if you're up, I don't know what Star Yar or something all the way up there, you probably don't need a Makarov or a can of beans, so to speak. Granted, there's other cans of food. You probably, at that point in time in your character's life, you have different goals. And then the character way the hell down south, and say Komarovo, he probably doesn't need. What's a good example? I don't know. He probably doesn't need that chance for a mountain backpack or something to spawn as much as he needs the basics to get him off the coast and explore. And it's important that what we offer on the coast isn't it isn't the kind of stuff that makes it so there's no reason to leave, but it is the kind of stuff that makes it so that you have the tools to leave. And if you want to sit on the coast and do nothing but steal your friend's beans and shoot him in the head with the Makarov, sure, it's sustainable to a certain degree, but you want to experience the full game, you need to go inland. You need to head to those military bases and risk running into a player. Want to get a better gun. If you want to fix up that vehicle, you got to do all that stuff. And it's just a matter of making as much as I hate doing a linear progression, it's a matter of at least making sure that potential linear progression exists, and then supporting the fact that people don't have to take it if they don't want to.
Yeah, I would like to see a really high concentration of zombies in places like Cherno. That
Again, yeah, that's definitely. Oh my God, I don't mean to cut you off, but on that
no
exact
worries.
subject, I was in Cherno. Was it last weekend? I think it was playing experimental, and I got into a. I was with a friend of mine who wanted to make friends on the coast, right? So we're talking to everybody we see. I made a good amount of friends that trip. It was rather interesting, just interacting with players that weren't hostile and kind of trying to band together. But there's always that one asshole, right? And this one asshole just comes down the street, doesn't want to talk, just decides that he wants to start shooting. So we go after this guy towards the Chernow Hospital, the one in town, not the apartments one, and we're running, effectively chasing this guy around the building, trying to engage in this run and gun fight. And as we're starting to make loops around the building, the infected they start, like, there's 2 around the first loop, and then there's 8 around the next loop, and then there's 14 around the next loop, and then it starts to get to a point where I can't even pick this son of a bitch out of the crowd. Like, the infected are everywhere, and that is fantastic, because initially we didn't. I mean, we noticed infected, but we didn't notice like a mob. Like, oh, there's a mob, we have to avoid that mob. They were fairly evenly spread out throughout Chernogorsk. But as we made noise, firing our guns and drawing their attention, then they themselves naturally formed that horde, and it was it went
Yeah,
from I can handle this to holy fuck, I'm gonna die.
yeah. It emerged out of the mechanics.
Yes, it was
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. And there are going to be areas on the map which are pretty packed with infected towards the north, or harder areas to get into.
I
Is that
definitely,
right?
I definitely,
Yeah.
like the TC military base or Northwest Airfield and such. Definitely want it so that your tactics when navigating these areas, isn't relegated to solely making sure you have cover as much as it is, shit, stop in the street. There's a zombie up ahead. Just wait for it to pass. Don't want to grab that attention, because the whole like sub tactic of managing your aggro,
Yeah,
so that you're not visible to somebody. That's definitely a core component of player interaction in DayZ, I believe.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, so do you think there might be places where you pretty much have to group up with a few people to push in there to kill enough zombies to get to the good gear or something like that?
Um, I think like we definitely want to get to that point. Like, in my experience, uh, players uh, so rarely want to be nice to each other. It doesn't matter how beneficial we make it. I mean, that was very very clear in the mod, as well. It really didn't, like, if you give people the option, they might pretend to be your friend. Oh no, you had that so close. I'm watching the replay. Oh man.
Beast
Anyways,
mode.
um, definitely, oh my god, that crotch shot was amazing. I definitely want to get to that point with certain areas, like the airfield or the TC military base, like I said.
Yeah,
Um, but I firmly believe that the highest concentration of infected would not be in those areas. They would be in the big cities like
mm,
Electro and Cherno and Berezino and Novid and Svetlo and Zelenogorsk and so on and so forth.
yeah.
Like
Well,
that. That's where the population center is. So.
that's exactly what I was going to say. It would make the most sense to have them wandering around areas where the most people were before everything went down.
That said, I definitely want to add the roaming infected back to the helicopter crashes. I think that was really important. Like,
Yeah,
when you saw one, you're like, "Oh, I've got to get rid of the zombies first." And in doing so, you reveal yourself to anybody that's watching the helicopter crash. And then, yeah, so
yeah,
you've got that two polar opposite there: the guy that just camps the crash and watches to see if the zombies have been killed, and the guy that goes and kills the zombies. Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's cool.
yeah. It would make sense that as well that that a soldier who's infected would, I guess they might have a bit of body armor on. They'd take some more shots to kill. Maybe a bit fitter and stronger than the average person.
We definitely like to try to do that, like some kind of slightly harder to kill infected that you might find around military bases.
One thing I've always wanted to see, like when you scroll onto a infected and you see the image come up for look at the contents of them. What about things like having them with armor, ballistic armor or ballistic helmets, and that actually counts towards them being stronger. And if you can kill them well enough, one of the things I've always longed for is finding stuff on the actual bodies of the zombies, and that particularly, maybe some of the rarer loot like grenades and ballistic vests and stuff like that.
Oh, finding stuff on the infected, not a problem. Whether or not we start like calculating the armor values of whatever they're wearing, I don't want to commit my programmers to that just right now. Technically, it's not impossible. Like it's clearly something we could do. I think it's just a matter, especially at this point, of making sure that we don't bite off more than we can chew as far as getting to the 1.0. What we do past that, well, God knows. But right now, it's a matter of checking off all the existing boxes before adding new ones.
When's the next official Survivor game, sir?
Oh boy. The next official Survivor games is entirely dependent upon a build that is, let's say, compatible with a competitive esport. Having been the guy that put it together since 2012, I'm very aware of how many people call for my lynching when someone dies to a bug. So maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe I'm just getting afraid of people actually physically killing me over a video game.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah. As soon as we have a build that we can pull this off on, we'll do it. But 58, not the case. Like, it's not the case.
I actually have been watching a good friend of yours, Blur Man.
Oh God,
he is hilarious. He is absolutely brilliant, and he told me the story of the pool dance.
Oh my God, what?
Yes, where he went and recorded a video especially for you, and I thought that's just brilliant. That's mates. That's really, really good mates. That he went and danced.
Blair is an interesting guy.
What was the song again?
It's been years since I've seen it.
It's one of those 90s in the club sort of.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, music songs, and it's come on, and he said it was after Survivor Games, it hadn't gone that well, and you were feeling a bit down about it, and then you were playing music, and that song come on, and he goes, "Oh man, I used to dance to that all the time," and apparently you said to him, "I would pay good money to see you dance to that song," and he said, "I'll be back," and an hour later he comes back, and he's uploaded a video of him dancing to. I'm certain it was something like CNC Music Factory.
Oh yeah. It was probably because it was from my stream. It was probably aggressively 90s. And I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, he like wrote my name on his chest or something. It was just, I was like, Blair, there are other people there. Like, what are these people thinking of you just standing there dancing to a camera with your shirt off? He's a unique individual, that man.
He's brilliant. He is absolutely brilliant. I'm a huge fan.
There was years back. There was an Australian that if I was to pick somebody that really really fits like the cartoon character definition of an animated bogan, it was this guy. It was like Combat Wombat, I think it was, and Blur had stumbled across him streaming Counter-Strike Global Offensive on Twitch, and apparently was offended by how, as I put it, bogan this guy was, and for the next 2 months, Blur was obsessed with harassing this guy for poorly representing Australia because he was living in New York City. And, it's just an example of what Blair's like. He just continued to go back to this guy, and they would argue over his chat, like about, I don't know, poorly representing Australia, I guess. Yeah, you had to be there to see it. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. The guy played Counter-Strike Global Offensive from his couch with a webcam on, kind of slouching in the couch with no shirt on, and he'd like pick his belly button, and his accent was so very, very like. Have you seen the cartoon There's a web cartoon out there somewhere of like two actual like as bogan as you can get characters with like that really thick, like you can barely understand what they're saying, kind
Yeah,
of twinge
Damo
accent.
and Darren.
Yes,
Yeah,
that one.
isn't
This
it brilliant?
this guy was perfect. Like he was literally jumped out of that cartoon, and he would stream just like shirt off, laying there, scratching his balls, picking his belly button, and insulting his chat.
Where I'm from, there's whole towns of people like that.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
that's Australia. There is whole
Yeah,
towns
it's not
like that.
inaccurate.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
And we
ha-
wouldn't
half of them
change
are
it
in my
for a
family.
thing.
Yeah, I'm related to a lot of them. Anyways, all right. Thank you very much, Hicks, for your time.
Oh yeah, I'm
Amazing.
sorry I took so long to show up, but at least I'm glad I made it.
Yeah, no problem at all.
We're glad
Um,
you made it. It means a lot to us. Once
yeah,
again, you've proven to the few people who are watching that whilst there's not a hell of a lot of us and no one quite as big as some of the overseas names, that we do matter a bit to you guys in the development team, the small but very passionate Australian DayZ community.
Well, I've never seen anywhere in any other continent that many people randomly show up to hear me talk about DayZ. Like us, the Australians really, really presented.